Former Conservative Marilyn Gladu is the latest MP crossing the floor to join the Liberal caucus. Mark Carney is now just one seat away from a majority government.
Mainstream media wants you to believe that Mark Carney is still one seat away from a majority. But the truth is, he already has it. Tonight, we explain why. My name is Nico Lagan, and I'm too conservative for the conservatives. My co-host Rob Ambrose, not woke enough for the liberals. We are the political orphans. I'm sure you heard about this. It's been announced. It's everywhere. It's in all social media. It's on all mainstream media platforms. Another conservative MP joins the Conservative Party. That makes her the 5th MP to cross the floor since November. So we had Chris D'Entremont in November, Michael Maw in December, Matt Generou in February, Lori Eidlaut last month, and then today, Marilyn Gladu is joining the Liberal Party. Mainstream media is telling you that Mark Carney is still one seat away. But is that true? No, it ain't. Because he does have a majority. Right now, technically, he has 171 seats and he needs 172. But there are some by-elections coming up next Monday, April 13th. There are by-elections. 3 ridings are up for grabs. And until today, Mark Carney needed the 3 of them in order to get his majority. But turns out that because of that new crossing, he only needs 2 of them. And guess what? 2 out of the 3 ridings are in Toronto. There are Liberal strongholds. One belonged to Chrystia Freeland and the other one to MP Blair, which means he has his majority. The third one is in Terrebonne, Quebec. I don't know if you remember, but this is the riding where the Liberals won by 1 single vote after a recount. It went to the Supreme Court of Canada in order to fix the issue with pre-voting that they had. Remember, they had letters that were sent out with the wrong postal code and people's votes were not counted. This is the riding. So until today, he needed that riding in order to get his majority. But because there's a new floor crossing, he don't need it anymore. So when you think about it, when you're honest with yourself and you stop lying to yourself, you realize that he does have his majority. But one thing I got to give him, I got to give credit where credit is due. I don't like Mark Carney. I am not a fan. That dude is evil as shit, if you ask me. But it is very clever what he did, because having somebody else cross the floor just before the by-election not only guarantees him his majority, if you want to disagree with me that he doesn't have it already, but what's clever about this is that because he's 1 seat away from his majority, he can now claim that he got his majority through voting and not through floor crossings, because this is a massive problem that we have in Canada where people can just cross the floor. To me, it makes no sense. It should have never happened. You should never be allowed to cross the floor. And if you do cross the floor, there should be a by-election. I've been saying this for months and months and months, ever since Chris D'Entremont joined the Liberals from the Conservative Party. But it's clever. It's clever that he's going to play that card, because there's been a lot of complaints. There's been a massive amount of complaints in Canada where people are outraged that he's going to get his majority government and not by voting, by floor crossings. So for him to get exactly what he needs for the by-elections, which he's already guaranteed 2 out of the 3 votes, is absolutely Clever. Very, very clever. But just to remind you guys, this is the first time in Canadian history that we have a government, a minority government, that gets his majority through floor crossings, not through voting, which it's something we really need to consider as Canadians. Unfortunately, it's too late. Let me say this first. It is too late because it's already happening. It's happened. And there's nothing much that we can do about it right now. We're kind of screwed. But all the Canadians out there should really be asking themselves a very important question, because if MPs are capable of changing party just because they want to, not because their constituents are telling them to do it, not because they were voted to do that, but just because they want to, just because they probably got offered something better on the other side, does voting really matter? Does your vote matter if the MP that you vote for is capable of crossing the floor at any given day? Because if we're honest for a second here, most people don't vote for an MP or a candidate because of his record, because of his past, because we all know who he is or she is. People vote for the representative of the party they want in power. So 4 out of the 5 floor crossings that we've seen since November have been conservative. I guarantee you that if you go into their writings and you ask them why they voted for that specific person, Chris D'Entremont, Matt Generou, Michael Ma, or now what's her name? I haven't Lori, not Lori Out Loud, but Marilyn Gladu, why they voted for them, it's because they represented the Conservative Party. Had nothing to do with them. I'm ready to bet that most people can't even remember what the MP they voted for is, what's their name. They just remember who they voted, what party they voted for. So it does matter. You shouldn't be able to just cross the floor. It does matter who the party you represent. But we gotta face the reality, because what we're talking about now is done. This is a done deal. There's nothing that we can do about it. This is the reality right now. We can vote, we can hammer it down to our MPs, to our government, that this should never happen, that they shouldn't be allowed to just cross the floor like that. But this is not something that we're going to fix right now. As we stand, we are April 8th. On Monday, the 3 by-elections, we should get the results, maybe a day or two afterwards. But the reality is that on Tuesday morning, let's say that, on Tuesday morning, Mark Carney will have a majority government. Not because it was voted for, but because of floor crossings. And if that doesn't worry people out there, let me just remind you of what this actually means. We're talking about a government that pushed Bill C9 through. They had an order of council. They put an order of council in order to rush, to prevent any further debate on Bill C9. We're talking about a bill that literally is going to change the landscape of freedom of speech if we ever had it in Canada, but that will literally criminalize emotions. This is the party that's in power right now. And until now, they still needed the backing of another party in order to push those bills. Now they can push whatever bill they want uncontested. It doesn't matter anymore because they have a majority. There's nothing the other parties can do. So what do you think is going to happen to Bill C2, C8, C16, C22, C25? They're going to soon become law. They're just going to be rammed through, just like we saw with Bill C9. And it's just a matter of time before we see a new version of Bill C-63, the Online Harms Act. So it's just a matter of time before it's retabled. And Mark Carney has been talking about social media bans for teens and kids under the age of 16. So you know this is going to become a reality. So the new norm in Canada is going to be censorship. It's going to be social media bans. It's going to be nothing that any of us on that show right now has grown up in. So we got a government that now has a majority that's been censoring her speech, that's been taking her guns away, essentially is trying to turn Canada into a surveillance state, not because we voted for this, but because of backroom deals. And for anybody out there that thinks that floor crossings, because they're legal, they're somehow moral, ask yourself a question. If the Conservatives were doing it, if the Conservatives were elected as a minority government and now have become a majority government, would you be okay with it? Would you support it still? Would you still be supporting floor crossings? Because if your answer to that is no, then this ain't right. It really doesn't matter that you are in favor of the Liberals doing it if you're not in favor of the Conservatives doing it. So we are at a very, very interesting time in Canada. I can tell you right now that I'm never going to stop talking the way that I've been talking. I will never censor myself because the government doesn't want me to speak the truth, not their truth, my truth, or even the God truth, just the truth. This is all you can expect from me, is to speak the truth, no matter how I feel about it. And I want to remind you guys something, because I've been working on something behind the scene. I alluded to it a couple of times. It's almost done. I'm not quite there. It's taking more time than I thought because I want to do it properly. But we started a nonprofit. And when I say we, I'm talking myself and a co-founder. We started a nonprofit where hopefully we can help Canada. We can do something with what's happening with Canada, and we can make real changes in Canada. It's going to take time, no doubt about it. We didn't end up in the situation that we find ourselves in today overnight. It took some time, so it's going to take time to try at least to bring Canada to what it used to be, or even better. But the reality is that before we are capable of doing something, it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse before it gets better. A lot of the things that we speak about on this show might sound very negative to people, but at the end of the day, we speak about what's going on. We're not going to hide away from what's going on. But we have to remember something, that as bad as it seems, it is not too late for Canada. But it is time for Canadians to stop looking to our political leaders for help and step up to the plate and become the leaders our country needs. It's time for Canadians to stand together and say enough. There are a lot more of us than there is of them, and it's time we start acting like it. So as much as you might think that it's too late, and I wanted to take this comment from Stu saying Canada is done. You know what, man? I got to tell you, this is a message I see every day. This is a message every time I post. Every time I post something on social media, whatever the platform, this is always in my comment section. Always, always in the comment section. And you know, man, it's hard for me to disagree with you, but I have to disagree with you, because you can always come back. No matter how bad it seems, you can always come back. It's not going to be easy, though. Don't get me wrong. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be a hard one. We're going to have to work for this one. Even if we were to really stand up and start doing something as we speak right now, it would still be a long road ahead. But it is not too late. It is still possible to bring back Canada, but we have to stop depending on our leaders to do it for us, and we need to start doing it ourselves, because clearly if there's one thing that we can be sure of, our political leaders are not the answer. They are not the answer. And the way that you change Canada is not by looking at Canada as a whole. The way you change Canada is by changing one community at a time. This is the only way to do it. This is exactly how, may I use the word revolution? Maybe I should. The only way to revolution is to change one community at a time, because at the end of the day, Canada is just a bunch of communities that live under the same rule. And I'm going to air quote that one because I did not pick those rules, and there's a lot of rules I disagree with. I don't agree with unmoral rules, but the point being is it's never going to be too late. It's just going to be a very rough road ahead. And I think that's a reality that we need to face. We need to face too, because we are already in a bad spot. And with the Liberals getting a majority, it's going to get worse. But it's not going to be too late. I will never say that it's too late, but we definitely need to wake up. And when I say we, I'm talking Canadians as a whole. Seems like Rob is having microphone problems. He was there earlier. He was actually early, which for the people that have been on this show before, that is a massive, massive thing. When Rob being early, it really never happens. But he was early. He's having microphone problem. He just texted me. That's what I'm looking at right now. So it doesn't seem like he's going to be joining us. But hey, you have me. I have you. So I guess we're going to be okay, right? But I want to see what you guys think, because if Rob's not there, that means we have a lot of time where we can take your comments. And this is something that we've been doing a bit less recently. We've had a lot of guests. We've had a lot of people on the show, and we haven't been taking as many comments as we used to. So today we don't have any guests. Tomorrow we don't have any guests. So I really want to hear your comments. I really want to take more comments, because at the end of the day, we do this because we want the civil discourse. So agree with me, disagree with me. I want to hear from you guys. I want you guys to tell me what you think. Is it too late for Canada? Is that what you really believe, that it is too late for Canada? And yeah, tell me what you guys think. Tell me how you feel right now. I don't speak about emotions very often, but how do you feel about the state of Canada right now? How do you feel about learning that basically the Liberal Party has a majority as per today? How do you feel about that? Do you think there's something that we can do about it? Actually, you know what? Let me rephrase that. What do you think that we can do about this? Because, a lot of time, I'll speak for myself. I can't speak for you guys, but a lot of time it's easy to complain. It's really easy to identify what the problems are and to complain about them. But I've been reflecting a lot over the past few weeks, about over the past few months. And there's a saying that keeps on coming back to my mind that says that there's only three types of people out there. There's the people that talk about other people. There are people that talk problems. And then you have the third group of people, and this is the type of group of people, this is the type of people we need to become. The third group of people, they speak solution, they speak implementation of solutions, and that's what we need to do. And when I say we, I'm really talking about myself. I really want to make sure that instead of simply complaining, we propose solutions. So you guys tell me, what do you think about this? How do you feel about the state of Canada? I want to hear from you guys. If it's your first time on the show, make sure to like, make sure to comment. We really want to hear from you. I'm so used to saying we, even though I'm alone. I don't think I'm a they, them or anything like that. I'm just saying we want to hear from you. I want to hear from you. I want to know what you think. So if you're new to this show, drop some comments. If you're not new to this show, drop some comments. make sure to like the stream. Smash that like button to help us with the algorithm. And if it's your first time here, subscribe. We want to see you again. So it doesn't matter if you're on the @RealNicolagan, if you're on my personal platform, make sure to subscribe. We do have another platform on YouTube that is The Political Orphans. Go there, like, subscribe, make sure to comment. But you guys tell me what you think. We're going to take some time to see. Again, I'm just really curious what you guys think. So let's start right here. That's the first one. Bam. That's the first one we're taking. Demetrius the Great is saying no votes don't matter. You know, man, I personally, if you don't know me, if you don't know what I'm about, I'm called a conspiracy theorist. I don't consider myself one. I just consider myself someone that does a lot of research. But no, our votes don't matter. I really don't believe that PMs or presidents are elected. They're selected. But let's play devil's advocate for a second, right? Let's say that we are the vast majority of Canadians and we still believe that votes matter. You look at what happened in Terrebonne, in the riding in Quebec, that's right next to me, literally 10 minutes away from where I am right now. And during the past elections, the Liberals won by one vote. Literally 60-ish thousand people, between 50 and 60,000 people in that riding voted. And the Liberals won by one single vote after a recount. It was the Bloc Québécois that won, and then there was a recount. Then the Liberal won by one vote. And then it turns out that this woman voted in advance. So she used the Election Canada envelope that was provided to her. She sent in her vote and she had voted for the Bloc Québécois. So technically her vote would have tied the vote results. But it turns out that Election Canada made a mistake on the postal code on those envelopes. So something like 20 to 40, there's not really a definite number out there, but dozens of votes did not count, no matter who they voted for. They were sent back to sender because the postal code was wrong. Do you know what the Election Canada did? Nothing. They refused to either call a by-election or to revise the results. Right then and there, it should tell you that our votes don't matter. So no matter if you're like me and you think that presidents and prime ministers are selected and not elected, you can still see how even in a system that's supposed to work, votes are not equal. And they proved it right there. The Bloc Québécois had to go to, I believe, the Supreme Court of Canada. I would have to confirm this, but they went, I'm pretty sure, like 99% sure they went to the Supreme Court of Canada and they reversed it. And that is why we're seeing a by-election. Because the two other by-elections that we're seeing in Toronto, it's Chrystia Freeland that left to go work with or for the greatest actor of all time, Vladimir, the leader, I was going to say Vladimir, the leader of Ukraine, the greatest actor of all time. She went to vote, she went to work for him, and then Blair, can't remember if it was his last name, his first name, but another liberal left to go work in Europe. So the reason that we have a third by-election is because of the result. So does your vote matter? I don't think so. I really, really don't think so. So I agree with you. Good morning. Good morning. Good evening. Good evening. What? Hélène Degenerate. Oh, that's a great name. Hélène Degenerate 1. We may have to activate Nicole to put Nutbag from the stream a few weeks ago. I'm not sure if I understand the comment. I don't know if you're making fun of me. If you're making fun of me by calling me Nicole, that's okay too. Wouldn't be the first time. You're not hurting my feelings. We may have to activate Nicole the Nutbag from the stream. Oh, shit. You're not calling me Nicole. You're talking about the woman in Toronto that got the visit from the police and she just ripped into them. Sorry, my apologies, Ellen. Degenerate. That went over my head, but I know exactly what you're talking about. That's true. Huh? That she would be the perfect person for that. Man, that woman was she had been waiting for that her whole life. If you don't know what I'm talking about the woman that got the visit from the Toronto police for social media post that she made, and she basically ripped into the police like she lost her shit on them. The video we have her. You can check in our interviews from a couple of weeks ago. She yep, it was Canada's definitely going down a path that I'm not happy about. Hard for me, not hard for me to believe, but this is where we are at, so we definitely need to do something about it. Sheldon or Sheridan Forbes. My apologies, brother. Okay, national solutions or personal first, Nico? You know, man, that is a great question. That is a question that I've been pondering for, man, since March 2020. For the past 6 years, I've been asking myself that question. And you know what? The the truth. Not saying that I lie, because you know when you say let's be honest, that implies that you're not always honest. But if I am 100% honest, because sometimes you don't say everything because it doesn't apply or whatever reason, but if you really ask me why I do what I do and why I'm going to continue doing what I do, it's because God wants me to. As insane as it might sound to some people out there, I don't do it because I want to. I don't do it because this is what I planned on doing. I do this because it needs to be done. And we need more people speaking the truth. We need more people out there just educating, because as cheesy as this sounds, it all starts with education. You always need to educate the people on what is actually happening. And unfortunately, the average individual out there is depending on mainstream media to give them the news. They expect content creators out there, and I don't really care if you're a liberal, if you're a big C conservative out there, there's not a lot of people that are actually speaking the truth without walking the political line. And that's my biggest problem with the big C conservative content creators out there. They speak about some truth as long as it doesn't make them an enemy of the conservative party, and that's a problem. That is a big problem. So Sheridan, I could have potentially went back to my career as a sales engineer, even though I lost it for not taking the vax. I could probably if I really wanted to, could go back to the corporate world, but that's not what I'm supposed to do. That's not what I was meant to do. So if I do what I do is not for personal reasons, because personal reasons would be a lot simpler. A lot, a lot simpler. Oh, I always like that. I'm gonna address this before we get to the next topic, but I always love these. Prove your fucking bullshit. God exists. So I got this comment earlier too, and I'm not sure right now, SRCX, if you're asking me to prove that God exists, or you're asking somebody else in the comment section if God exists. I can I can actually send that one right back to you. Prove to me that he doesn't. Because there is nothing I can tell you that will convince you that God exists. You know why I know he exists? Because I have been in his presence. I have met him. He's all over us. He's all around us. He's everywhere. Chances are, if you don't believe that God exists, you've never really spent time by yourself. As in, go to the woods where nobody is and stay there for months, if not years, which I've done. If you've never spent time in nature by yourself, remove all distractions, I can understand why someone would believe that God doesn't exist. But if you haven't done the work, very, very, very ignorant to say that God doesn't exist, especially that you can't prove it. So as much as you're going to tell me that I cannot prove that God exists, neither can you. You cannot disprove that he does. And that's always the interesting conversation, because whatever you have to say about God, it's okay for you not to believe it. My co-host, Rob Ambrose, an atheist, doesn't believe in God, and that's fine. That's not a problem with me. At the end of the day, I don't really care if you believe in God or not. But to have the audacity to tell me that he doesn't exist because you don't believe when you can't prove it, saying that I can't prove it either, is quite ironic. Absolutely ironic. Now, that being said, I appreciate all your comments, guys. I apologize if I can't get to all of them. There's bunch, a bunch of them. But before we get to the next topic, we need to speak about our sponsor. This episode of The Political Orphans brought to you by Miss Cleo's Pet Treats, 100% natural, healthy dog treats, free from preservative, additives, and fillers, made by hand right here in Canada. Not only are the treats handmade, but the meat is locally sourced from farms in Manitoba, so no nasty Chinese meat for your dog, because your dog deserves better. So go to Cleo's Cookies and Treats.ca. Use the discount code Political Orphans and get 20% off your entire purchase. And I got to tell you, they're not just the sponsor of the show. I have a lot of their treats here. Absolutely, absolutely amazing. My German Shepherd loves them, and she's a hard eater. She's not like other dogs where she's going to eat whatever you give her. She's fussy as hell. But men, those treats are literally, I would argue that the meats that she gives is same par quality as what you eat in grocery stores. And I know we don't eat the best food in grocery stores. I can agree with that, but her food is top notch and it's dog food. So try it out. There's a story that we've covered, or there's a topic that we've covered here a few times, and we've talked about it because it was in the news, and I've been trying to get literally the biggest voice on this matter in Canada to come on the show, but she's pregnant right now and she's not far off from giving birth. So she is not capable of coming on the show at the moment, but I guarantee you I will have her at one point. MAID, assisted dying in Canada. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that there is a video that is going viral on X. And I got to tell you, this one, I knew this was coming. It was just a matter of time. They've been talking about it for at least 3 years. But to hear somebody say it out loud, and I want you to not only listen to what this woman, this doctor by the name of Mona Gupta, is saying, but I want you to look at the way she's saying it, how she actually is on camera while talking about literally killing people is absolutely insane. And those are the people that are being brought in committee in order to testify. This is how sick our society is. So here is a post by Table Salt. I don't know if you guys follow this guy. There's a lot of his content I don't agree with, but a lot of the stuff that he posts, I agree. And this is one of them. So I'll read the caption. Wow, this is extremely bad. Psychiatrist confirms to parliamentarian that in less than 1 year, Canadians will be eligible for government-assisted death for many common conditions like eating disorders. This sounds insane, but it actually is. Listen to this.
Believe an eating disorder could qualify someone for MAID?
Again, I think the legislation is clear that it really depends on the circumstances of the person,
So it could.
potentially.
And depression as well, major depressive disorder?
Again, it depends on the clinical circumstances of the person.
Is there consensus among psychiatrists?
So just to make sure you understood what she just said, she basically said that depression could lead to MAID. Depression could be enough to lead to MAID, that an eating disorder could be enough to get MAID in Canada. That is what she just said.
On how many treatments one needs to try or for how long one needs to seek treatment for it to be classed as treatment resistant?
The use of the term treatment resistance in the clinical research literature is meant to capture different populations depending on the goal of the study being undertaken. So there are a range of different definitions, but of course, as we know, treatment resistant is not the term that's used in the legislation. It is a different term that describes a different set of circumstances than what researchers are interested in when they want to identify a population they consider treatment resistant.
Would it be reasonable to expect someone in a situation like this where they have a diagnosis of a mental illness to try all available treatments before qualifying for MAID?
Is that not just the simplest of questions, that if you do have a mental illness and you are seeking MAID, that the doctors make sure that you've tried everything possible, that you've actually tried to fix the problem, to cure yourself, to, do something, find a solution? Is that not just the most common sense question? What have you done to try to get better? Isn't it? To me, that's just pure common sense. Yet, listen to this.
Well, again, I think it is difficult to make rules about diagnosis. I think we have to look at the individual person. Certainly, ordinary clinical practice would be that you would pursue all of the usual standard accepted treatments for a condition and then some. Propose experimental treatments, innovative treatments, etc. But there may be reasons that an individual has that they can't take advantage of those treatments. They may not tolerate them. They may not be available.
They might not tolerate them. So dying is better than tolerating the treatments.
May not tolerate them. They may not be available. Really, it may be so experimental it's only available in one center in the country. It may not really be considered safe for that person.
It might not be considered safe. She literally said that a reason why somebody with a mental illness would not get treatment is because it wouldn't be safe. But killing that person is safe. And remember, this is a doctor that's speaking right now.
Person in light of their other health circumstances. So I think there is some variable there. But if what you're suggesting is, the standard suite of recommended treatments, that's what people ideally would have, absolutely.
But believe in eating disorder.
So basically, she's saying she is talking about mental illnesses being able to get MAID. And I don't know if you had heard about this. This is something that they've been talking about for years, but this is new. This was Andrew Lawton, conservative member, speaking to a doctor in committee. But the reality is that, as insane as this might seem, it is not fiction. This is a reality that has been spoken about for years now. And if you look, I found this website right here called Dying with Dignity Canada, and even them, they talk about it right here. So under an article that's just labeled MAID and mental illnesses, everything you need to know about medical assistance in dying for those with a mental illness as the sole underlying condition. They're not dying. Those people are not dying. They just have a mental illness. If your sole underlying medical condition is a mental illness, you are not eligible to apply for MAID until March 17th, 2027. So that is next year. That is within the next year. They report that it will be possible for people with a mental illness as the sole cause of their problems to apply for MAID. And again, this might sound crazy to some of the people out there that are not aware about how insane MAID is, but here is the government, the official Canada.ca website on I guess we can call it an article that they published that was published on February 1st, 2024. The government of Canada introduces legislation to delay medical assistance in dying, to delay. That was 2 years, just over 2 years, so February 1st, 2024. But basically what they say is that right here, this is the sentence that those are two sentences you need to hear. The government of Canada introduces legislation to delay medical assistance and dying expansion by 3 years. And then the other portion is right here. I'm going to highlight it for you on the screen so you can see it. This is why today the honorable blah, 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 3 people introduced legislation proposing to extend the temporary exclusion of eligibility for MAID for persons suffering solely from a mental illness for 3 years. So back in February, back in 2024, there was some pushback when they first started talking about this. So they put it on hold for 3 years. But now it's back on the docket. Now they're talking about it again. And the reality is that as it stands, there's a strong possibility that by the end of March next year, within the next 11 months, people will be able to commit suicide through MAID because they have a mental illness as their sole issue. They're not dying. This is absolutely sick. Absolutely, absolutely sick. But it gets worse because we can't speak about MAID without speaking about another term that they made up. I know you've heard about this one. Mature minors. Do you remember this? Mature minors. How? That's not even possible. The whole point of being a minor is that you're not mature. But they made up a term. The government made up a term called mature minors. And that is the next thing that they're trying to push. It is under examination as we speak right now. They are looking into it. It's under what they call active review. And here's Global News that is reporting on this on February 2nd, 2023. Minors should be eligible for assisted dying, parliamentary committee says. And in this article, and I quote, parliamentarians are recommending the federal government appoints an independent expert panel to evaluate criminal code provisions for assisted death for mature minors. That was in 2023. So we're over 3 years now. And it's under active review. And the legislation that they passed in 2024 to kind of push it further down the road, 3 years further, that would bring us to March next year, that was part of it. Mature minor were part of it. So our government is looking to offer people with mental illnesses the choice of committing suicide, assisted dying. It's suicide. You can call it whatever you want. It's still suicide. Then the same government is trying to push the term mature minor so that they somehow, minors would be able to commit suicide. Imagine if it does become a reality next year, which it looks like it will. Mature minors. So let's say somebody that's 15 years old with a mental issue being, let's say I'm trans, let's say I have an eating disorder, I'm bulimic, could commit suicide. Somebody that's 15 years old with a mental illness could potentially commit suicide next year in March 2027. This is what Canada's become. A place where our government is literally killing people. You can argue all you want that they're not really killing people. And sure, you know what? They're coercing people. You know what? I'll say that. They're coercing people into terminating their lives instead of finding solutions. And if you don't believe what I'm saying, if you think I'm exaggerating, did you hear about this story? And this story was covered just a couple of weeks ago. It came out just a couple of weeks ago. I didn't bring it up on the show, but here's the perfect opportunity to do so. If you think I'm crazy, if you think that what I'm saying is insane, listen to this one. That's from the National Post. This BC woman was offered MAID before other treatments. She said no to death and went on to climb a volcano. And this is the woman, if you're looking at your screen right now, this is the woman in question. But basically what happened, here's some context. This is the story of a woman called Miriam Lancaster. She arrived at Vancouver General Hospital by ambulance in excruciating back pain, my apologies. She and her daughter, Jordan Weaver, alleged that while still in the emergency department, a young doctor at the Vancouver General Hospital raised the option of medically assisted death. The doctor came in and said, Miriam, I understand that you're in a lot of pain. We can offer you MAID. Just like that, Weaver said. Turns out she had a small fracture in her sacrum, which is a bone at the bottom of the spine that connects to the pelvis. My mother, that's Weaver, her daughter, saying, my mother and I are practicing Catholics, so we would never accept MAID under any circumstances. And only when they answered with a firm no were other treatment options raised, the family says. The doctor said, well, you could get rehab, but it will be a long road and it will be very difficult. So we don't know what to expect. Because the woman's 84 years old. As you could see from the picture, she's older, but she was 84. Or she is 84 right now, at least. Yet, here's what actually happened. 6 weeks later, 6 weeks after the fracture, last April, she walked her daughter down the aisle at her wedding. She later traveled to Cuba, Mexico, and most recently walked and rode on horseback up Guatemala's Pacaya volcano. So she recovered within 6 weeks of a fracture in her sacrum. Yet when she showed up at the hospital, she was offered MAID. This is how ridiculous Canada is. And in my opinion, it gets worse. Because here's one other story that needs to be addressed. Because to me, that is simply highlighting a massive problem that we have with MAID. So agree, disagree with MAID all you want, that's fine. And you know what? Let me be clear here. I do understand that there are some situations where I understand why people want MAID. I get it. My stepfather had cancer, throat cancer, esophagus cancer, to be precise. And he went through chemo and radiation for 7 years, give or take, 6 or 7 years. And we're talking radiation or chemo every month. And he used to tell us that he would feel okay for about a week every month. He would get treatment, he'd feel okay, and then 3 weeks he was sick as hell. He went from about 200 pounds to maybe 130. His skin was gray. He was all skinny. He wasn't able to keep his food down. He was not able to sleep laying down anymore because your esophagus kind of blocks all the gases and all the reflux to come up to your throat. So they had to remove the esophagus. They extended his stomach all the way to his throat. So he was only able to eat super small meals. He was not able to lay down anymore. His taste buds, because of the radiation and the chemo, completely changed. He used to tell us that the food that he used to love didn't taste the same. And he admitted to me in a private conversation, now that he's dead, obviously I can say it, but the thing that scared my stepfather the most wasn't dying, was becoming a vegetable, because he was a brilliant guy, super, super smart guy, one of the smartest guys I've ever known. So I just want to make sure you guys understand that I do see why some people want MAID, and I could be convinced that it's okay. I get it. At the end of the day, it's your life. You can do whatever you want. But there's some cases, I get it. I fully, fully understand it. But here's where it gets very, very problematic. So obviously you have an 84-year-old that broke a small bone in her back. She's offered MAID instead of rehabilitation. Then you have mature minor that might be able to get MAID for their mental illnesses starting next year. And then you hear stories like this one. So let me share that to you guys. Ba-bing. So you hear stories like this one, where American men receives organ harvested from Canadian men killed by MAID. And you heard that right. There's a 59-year-old American that received a heart from a 38-year-old man with ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease, if you prefer. He had opted for MAID, and somehow his organs, or at least one of his organs, ended up in the US. And I got to tell you, when I first heard this story, because this story is a few months old, maybe a couple of months old at least, is when I heard about it. But when I heard this story, the first thing that comes to mind is, how the hell are organs, Canadian organs, ending up in the US? And that's a question I had never seen addressed before, but let me address it for you. So, although Canada does not have a closed loops for organs because we have a small population, it is often impossible. And those are claims. I'm not saying that I agree with this. I'm just telling you what the situation is. It is often impossible to find a perfect genetic match for a specific organ, like a lung or a kidney, before it expires. To prevent organs from going to waste, Canada has formal interprovincial and international sharing agreements. Organizations like the Canadian Blood Services manages the national organ waitlist. If a match isn't found in Canada within a required window, the organ is offered to the United Network for Organ Sharing, UNOS, in the United States. And here's where it gets very problematic. Standard organ donation usually happen after a car accident, trauma, which often damages the organs. But MAID is different, because MAID is a planned medical procedure. The transplant team can be in the room next door. The organs are harvested from a living circulating system minutes after the heart stops. This makes MAID's organs premium quality compared to accident victims. Because the organs are such in good condition, they're much more likely to be eligible for international exchange if a Canadian match isn't immediate. The question that should come next, at least this is where my mind went, are organs sold? Technically, no. Organs are not sold in the sense of a retail transaction, because it is strictly illegal to trade human organs for money in both Canada and the US. While the organ itself has no price tag, the procurement and transfer of that organ is a multi-million-dollar business. I would argue that it's probably a lot more than multi-million-dollar business. The surgical team, preservation equipment, and a hospital facility time for MAID organ harvest costs tens of thousands of dollars per patient. Not only that, but imagine how expensive it is to have to transfer an organ from somewhere in Canada to the US. You need to do it by private plane. It needs to be done right now. You have you have a team on standby on both sides. In Canada, they're harvesting from a patient that literally just died. Then they have they have standby plane to transport that. Maybe they have a helicopter to get it to the plane, to get it to the other patient's hospital in the US, where they have another team on standby, maybe another helicopter from the airport to the cost is absolutely immense. So this is big business. It also says that when an organ is sent to the US via agreement like the reciprocal exchange, the receiving American hospital or organ procurement organization pays acquisition fees. So they're not buying the organ, but they're paying acquisition fees. The reality is that these fees cover administrative and logistical costs, but in practice, they ensure that the money flows from the recipient's insurance or the hospital system back to the organizations managing the transplant. So they're not selling the organs directly, but it's definitely big business where they're making money. That's basically what it's saying. I shouldn't laugh at this. I shouldn't smirk at this. It's just when you start researching, you start to try to understand what's really happening. It's absolutely insane to me. It is insane to me that we have a program that was intended to help people like my stepfather. And to kind of go back to my stepfather, the reason he never had MAID is because it wasn't available when he died. They were in discussions, they were talking about it, but he was not able to get access to it because it was not yet legal. It's something that he would have used, that he's told me that. And again, there's a case to be made for people like my stepfather, and that is what it was supposed to be for. But clearly, this is not what it's meant for anymore. You have 84-year-olds that are being offered MAID instead of rehabilitation. How many stories have I heard of people that were too poor to pay for their bills considering MAID? They can't afford to live, so instead they're going to kill themselves. Then you have Canadian organs that ends up in the US. I don't believe this one for a second. I wish I could find a doctor that wants to come on the show to speak about this. They're very hard to find. There's not a lot of doctors out there that want to come on the show to address this, but I find it very hard to believe that our population is so small that we don't have enough people waiting for organs that they end up in the US. I don't believe it for a second. And the worst part is that we're actually considering we're talking about this right now. It's being actively researched that not only are people with mental illness, that is the only problem that they have is mental illness, they're not dying, will be able, at least potentially be able to ask for MAID starting in March next year, 2027. But the same case could happen to mature minors, teenagers that could get assisted dying because they have a mental illness. This is what Canada has become. Guys, we're 8 o'clock right on the dot. I want to thank you, every single one of you out there, for being on the show, for being in the comment section. I wish I would have been able to take more comments. There's so many comments that popped in, and it's hard to take all the comments when you're alone. It's so much easier when you have a co-host that can actually filter through the comments as the other is talking. But all to say that I appreciate every single one of you. I always do. At least I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if it wasn't for you guys. So thank you for being here. Make sure to smash that like button. Make sure to comment. We want to hear from you guys. We always want to hear from you guys. Agree with us, disagree with us. We want to hear from you. If you're first time on the show, make sure to subscribe. We want to see you back here. And I will wish you a great night until tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Peace.